I think it's very clear looking forward for the future of Halo that we're going to have Halo Infinite, which is supposed to be supported for 10 years. And then there will be Halo the Master Chief Collection, which will be this ultimate collection where players can go back and experience the story of Halo and get caught up with everything Halo related before jumping into Infinite. Or if they're already an Infinite fan, they can go back and see the legacy of all of the previous Halo games. And while I do think there are some more things that the MCC really needs to have done for it in the future, in the recent months while Luke and I have been on our quest to 100% the Master Chief Collection, we really began to notice how drastically aged Halo Combat Evolved can really feel at times, and the experience is clunky at best and jarring when at worst. But Halo being decades old at this point, is there even a clear-cut way that maybe a company could approach Halo Combat Evolved with enough respect and love for the franchise that not only preserves the gameplay that kicked off the franchise all these years ago, while maybe also finding a way to recreate an updated experience where everyone wins? Well, maybe we could find a way to perhaps give Halo Combat Evolved the much needed features that really date this game and hold it back from all of the games that came out afterwards, that could potentially serve as a really good starting point for new players who've never experienced Halo before. Now, don't get us wrong, we do think there's other things that the MCC would benefit from getting sooner, like Blur remastered cutscenes for Halo 3 and ODST, and maybe even Reach 2 if they really feel like throwing that budget around. Honestly, these games still look great, but the cutscenes could really use some help when compared to Halo 2 Anniversary or Halo 4. We'd even like to see Halo 5 added in to some extent to MCC sometime in the future, maybe after Infinite releases, so players can still access the game and have populated lobbies, and other important things like stability fixes, and all the little neat updates that we've been getting are cool as well. Don't get us wrong on any of that. But when it comes down to big picture down the road, I think it would be a huge disservice to ignore the Halo game that is the oldest, that many players will go into first to see where things all started and get a grasp on what the Halo story really is about. But if you sit down and you actually look at Halo Combat Evolved 20 years after it released, and the 9-year-old anniversary version of the game, which is just the base game with newer textures and lighting effects on top of the older Halo CE, for a brand new Halo player, it really doesn't hold up nearly as well when you compare it to any of the newer Halo games. And when you look at the differences between how great Halo 2 Anniversary graphics look compared to what they were able to do with Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, which reused a lot of Reach assets, I don't think Halo Combat Evolved really got the fair deal as far as what could have been possible, or what could, at the very least, be possible moving forward. Now, of course, don't get us wrong, we wouldn't want them to replace the existing versions of Halo CEA on MCC. I think it's important to always have the legacy version of the game accessible and playable, and it's awesome that they added the original multiplayer into MCC since it wasn't even in the original anniversary. But wouldn't it be great for newer players or even experienced players to get to experience the original Halo CE story in a shorter, condensed remake that focuses on staying true to the gameplay ideas but polishes up on things that are really dated and stand out when you compare against other Halo games, even older Halo games like Halo 2. Visually speaking, I think it would be really cool to remake the locations from all of the levels in Halo Combat Evolved, but in a newer engine, instead of maybe doing a reskin over an old existing game. This would allow 343 to implement updated mechanics, better visuals, and greater accessibility instead of trying to dig into Bungie's old spaghetti code. From an art style perspective, it would be awesome to see them attempt to really recapture the art direction of the original Combat Evolved, rather than being forced to use the existing palettes from Halo Reach because of a shorter development time frame. I mean, they could easily use an existing engine, but it'd be cool if they used the Slipspace engine they're working on for Infinite, and of course, if the engine proves to be as revolutionary as it's allegedly supposed to be, it would be a pretty big benefit. And since we've heard 343 talk about how the budget on doing those pre-rendered Blur cutscenes is pretty expensive, it could potentially allow good-looking cutscenes without having to dish out the budget to hire pre-rendered cutscenes made by Blur, which still would be a step up from what we currently have in Combat Evolved Anniversary. The one weird thing is, if you're playing any Halo game that's not Halo Combat Evolved and you jump back to Combat Evolved, it definitely sometimes feels like your hands are randomly tied together, where you're just a lot more restricted in just the general movement, and the aged physics engine is definitely very, very obvious within a few moments of playing the game.
But before before Elijah gets into it more, I want to talk about how it's kind of outdated that they use their own physics engine. That's just not a thing you do anymore today, and it's a big part why this game feels so clunky at times. So ever since Halo 2, they've been using the Havoc physics engine, which is an engine that has been used by many games like Half-Life 2, Assassin's Creed, multiple Call of Duties, and many more games. And it's just smart to not make your own physics engine, because it's really hard to fine-tune, to get everything right and to get everything feeling proper. So why not take advantage of outsourcing the physics engine? I think vehicle combat in Halo CE is one of the worst in all of Halo, and it is because Bungie didn't have enough time to fine-tune the physics in this game. So it would be nice to see an updated CE version that uses a better or newer physics engine. It would definitely make the game feel so much better if it was on par with even Halo 2 physics, or even better with Halo Infinite physics, which also is gonna use the Havoc engine. And I think a big part of Halo CE feeling outdated is because of the physics, and it is the main issue that needs to be fixed. But obviously there's other things wrong, which Elijah is gonna get into. But I think the physics would be a good start, and you might even be able to do it in a way where you don't have to redo everything.
It would be nice for a separate, refined Halo Combat Evolved experience that maybe cleans up some of these things, like no more instant splatter from warthogs going half a mile an hour, weird issues jumping off of objects, and just a cleaner working version. Co-op respawns maybe not being so disorienting when you're walking through a hallway, and maybe they could throw in some good old warthog mechanics that can make that warthog run a little bit tighter. Now, the charm of the original Combat Evolved, I get that, is so important. Like, it is fun just driving the warthog and hitting something very small and just bouncing around. Experiencing that should still be left intact, and we don't want them to remove Combat Evolved or replace Combat Evolved. But I do think it would be nice to maybe have a polished update where you could just play through the story and have, you know, a condensed experience of the game without as much of the frustration or the monotony. For instance, plotting a design that focuses on recapturing the aesthetic without dramatically changing the appearances of certain areas, it would be really nice. For instance, if we look at what they did with the first Anniversary Edition, we can see there were some major creative liberties taken into changing the way things looked. In some cases, it was really well done, but in other cases, it felt like it was too derivative of the original concept and the original appearance that Bungie was going for making the game. Maybe if they focus a little more on making the original game from scratch first, could allow for an overall better experience without having to drastically change things either. If the focus comes back to building a Halo experience, honestly, looking at something like SPV3 for some examples of non-invasive ways to implement some new mechanics that were brought into an older Halo game but were introduced in newer Halo games could really benefit a build of a new, fresh look at the first Halo story. Being able to pick up a sword would be so satisfying, and maybe hijack a ghost sometimes. Little things like that would really bring Halo CE to brand new players as a really functional way to be introduced to the game's franchise. I think each level for the most part should be remade and inspired by its original design, though in some cases, levels with a lot of backtracking can maybe be trimmed down a bit for the sense of simplicity and reduction of that monotony. And for instance, a level like Library shouldn't be removed from this version, but maybe a shortened, condensed version of the level with less waiting around and repetitive battles would be more fun to play through if there's just one big battle instead of just, you know, a bunch of little battles kind of coating you running through each floor. Keys is another great example where a lot of the level could just stay intact as is, but maybe when you get to the upper level and you're in the ship, you don't have to run through the entire ship like you did in Truth and Reconciliation, but instead you go through this really awesome flood-infected section that's maybe more linear, more action-packed, without feeling like it's this never-ending level. Matter of fact, I don't even think they should remake the multiplayer side of Halo Combat Evolved if they were to do a remake, because I think people should go back and experience the original game the way that it was made. But when you play through Halo 2, 3, ODST, 4, and Reach, there's something about Halo CE that always feels like it's the odd one out, and it's definitely its age. And I think there would be a really cool thing that could be said if some players could experience the same locations and story from CE without maybe having as jarring of a difference with mechanics, and then go back and experience the classic legacy version of CE that started it all, and you can see the improvements that were made over the years and maybe even appreciate them more. I guess this is a small case to be made, and maybe people don't agree with me on this, but as long as the classic CE can stay intact in the Master Chief Collection, I think a newer, refined version would not only be necessary, but exciting. But hey, if you guys liked this video, make sure you guys hit the like button down below, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this. We sometimes try to do good videos.
And also make sure to follow us on Twitter at Rocket Elijah. You can follow him over here, and at Rocket Sloth Luke. You can follow me. So make sure you follow both of us there. And thanks for watching our videos. We'll see you next time.